Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into a topic that honestly is a bit tough to talk about, but it's absolutely crucial that we do. We're unmasking the crisis of elder abuse and neglect. This is a massive public health issue, and my goal today is to really empower you. We're going to break down the data, the root causes, and the actual actionable solutions into simple terms straight from our source material. By the end of this, you're going to have a crystal clear picture of what's going on and, more importantly, how we can all step up and help. Let's jump right in. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the hidden epidemic. Then, recognizing the forms of abuse, understanding the root causes, the devastating impacts, managing and preventing abuse, and finally, our key takeaway and action plan.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the hidden epidemic. Let's define the crisis.
So, what exactly are we talking about here in simple terms? Elder abuse and neglect is the mistreatment or harm of elderly individuals, basically anyone aged 60 or older. And, we really have to get away from the idea that this is just some private, isolated family matter. It's not. This is a major social and public health crisis affecting a huge portion of the population.
Now, you might be wondering, why do we call it a hidden epidemic? Well, because it happens literally everywhere, behind closed doors at home, in long-term care facilities, right out in the community, and tragically, it goes wildly underreported. A lot of times, victims are just too afraid or ashamed to speak up. In other cases, cognitive impairments like dementia literally prevent them from being able to tell anyone what's happening. Because of all this silence, catching it requires intense vigilance from everyone: family, caregivers, and healthcare pros.
Moving right along to Section 2, recognizing the forms. Let's unmask the abuse. When we break down how this actually happens, it generally falls into two distinct buckets. First, you have intentional harm. This is the active stuff: physical violence, emotional intimidation, non-consensual sexual contact, and financial exploitation, which is basically stealing an elder's life savings. On the flip side, we have failures of care, and let me tell you, these are equally dangerous. This is neglect, when a caregiver simply fails to provide basic necessities like food, shelter, or medical care. Doing nothing can be just as deadly as a physical strike. And within that failures of care bucket, there's a very specific, heartbreaking form called self-neglect. This is when an individual themselves fails to meet their own basic needs. And it's crucial to understand this isn't usually out of stubbornness, it's a direct result of their own declining physical or mental health. It's a massive cry for help.
Okay, let's turn to Section 3, understanding the root causes. Why does this happen? This is where it gets really complex, because it's not always some cartoon villain scenario. It often starts with severe caregiver stress, extreme burnout, and a total lack of training. Families get thrust into caregiving roles without the skills to handle the physical and emotional toll, and they inadvertently cause harm. Add in things like the caregiver's own mental health struggles or substance abuse, and it's a recipe for disaster. We also see toxic dynamics where a caregiver relies on the elder for money, leading to exploitation, or where abuse is used just to exert control or even get revenge.
But wait, there's a whole systemic side to this too. Think about it. When an older person is highly dependent on others for basic daily tasks, and they're socially isolated without a support system, they become incredibly vulnerable. Mix in dementia, which can cause really challenging behaviors that an untrained caregiver can't handle. Zoom out even further, and the sources show that societal ageism, economic stress, and totally inadequate community support systems basically create this perfect, tragic storm where abuse can just thrive unnoticed.
Which brings us to Section 4, the devastating impacts, the ripple effects of abuse. Let's look at the sheer toll this takes, because the trauma compounds across every aspect of a person's life. Physically, you've got bruises, fractures, and a rapid decline in overall health. Emotionally, it causes deep depression, PTSD, and a total loss of self-worth. Cognitively, and this absolutely blew my mind, the stress of the abuse can actually trigger memory problems and accelerate brain aging. And financially, it can wipe out a lifetime of security, leaving victims completely destitute. And the ripple effects don't stop there. The damage spills over into their social circles, straining relationships with family and friends. Abuse completely shatters a person's trust in others. Because they become so isolated and fearful, victims actually end up at a much higher risk for future abuse. It's a vicious cycle that usually only gets broken through severe legal intervention and adult protective services. All right, Section 5, managing and preventing abuse. Time to talk about taking action. So, what's the game plan? If you suspect something is wrong, here is your step-by-step guide. Step 1. Recognize the signs. Keep an eye out for unexplained injuries or weird behavioral changes. Step 2. Report the abuse directly to authorities, like Adult Protective Services. Step 3. Ensure supportive services and counseling are provided. And that's for both victims and the perpetrators, since burnout is such a huge root cause. And Step 4. Secure immediate medical care and lock down their financial assets to stop any fraud.
But we can't just be reactive, right? We need long-term prevention. We've got to create safe living environments with staff who are trained to spot red flags. We need massive community education and better teamwork between healthcare, cops, and social workers. We also have to advocate for tougher laws and penalties. On a personal level, families need to set up things like power of attorney early on. And crucially, we absolutely must provide respite care, basically giving stressed caregivers a break before they hit their breaking point.
Finally, Section 6. Key takeaway and action. Empowering the community.
I want to highlight this exact quote from our source material. Many countries have laws and regulations in place, but community education and awareness campaigns are also important tools in addressing this issue. Government agencies and protective services are incredibly important, but they are often reacting after the fact. The true safety net, the real proactive shield, is an educated community that knows exactly what to look for and isn't afraid to step in.
So we've broken down the definitions, the root causes, and the specific signs to look for into simple terms. We know the laws are there, but the real power to protect our elders lies with us. It lies in community education. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Who in your community needs you to be their eyes and ears today? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay vigilant out there, and I'll catch you next time.